The ballroom of the Grand Windsor Hotel sparkled like something out of a dream. Crystal chandeliers cast warm golden light across tables draped in ivory linen, each centerpiece a towering arrangement of white roses and eucalyptus that must have cost a fortune. 200 guests filled the space, colleagues from my father's firm, old family friends, distant relatives I hadn't seen in years, and business associates who had flown in from 3 different states. I stood near the back, smoothing down my navy blue dress, the one I'd bought on clearance at Macy's 6 months ago, saving it for a special occasion. My husband David stood beside me, his hand warm on the small of my back, his simple black suit looking slightly worn at the cuffs. He'd offered to buy a new one for tonight, but I'd told him not to bother. We both knew we didn't need to impress anyone here. My father, Robert Mitchell, stood at the head table, silver-haired and distinguished in his custom-tailored tuxedo. At 67, he looked every inch the successful corporate executive he'd been for 42 years. My mother, Eleanor, sat beside him in a champagne-colored gown that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Next to them, my younger brother Michael and his wife Jennifer occupied seats of honor, their perfect smiles gleaming under the chandeliers. Everything about this night screamed success. Achievement. The American dream, fulfilled and celebrated. And then my father tapped his glass with a spoon. The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward the guest of honor. My father's face spread into that familiar smile, the one that had always been reserved for strangers and business associates, not for me. "I'd like to say a few words," he began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the room. "Before I retire and begin the next chapter of my life, I want to take a moment to thank everyone who has been part of my journey." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. "But first," he continued, his eyes scanning the room until they found me, "I want to speak about family. About what truly matters." My mother nodded encouragingly. Michael leaned forward, that smug expression I knew so well playing across his face. "Many of you know my son, Michael," my father said, gesturing toward him. Michael rose slightly, acknowledging the applause with a practiced wave. "He's become quite successful in his own right. Vice president at his firm. Married to this beautiful woman. Homeowner at 32. More applause. Jennifer preened. "And then there's my daughter, Sarah." Something in his tone shifted, a subtle change that only someone who had spent 40 years hearing variations of it could detect. The room's energy changed too, like the temperature dropping a few degrees. "Sarah," he repeated, and I felt David's hand tense against my back, who never quite figured life out. A few guests chuckled nervously, unsure if this was leading to a joke. "Still renting at 39, my father continued, shaking his head with theatrical disappointment. "Still driving that old Honda. Still needing help from her family to get by." The nervous chuckles became actual laughter. I watched my mother's face, looking for any sign of objection, but she was nodding along, her expression serene and approving. Michael's smirk widened. "She never really had that drive, you know," my father added, as if I weren't standing right there in the middle of 200 people. "Some people just aren't cut out for success. But we love her anyway. She's still family, even if she never quite became anything." My cheeks burned. I could feel every eye in the room on me, pitying, amused, uncomfortable. My hands trembled at my sides. I wanted to sink into the floor. And then my husband quietly stepped forward beside me and whispered, "Sweetheart, maybe it's finally time they know." I looked at him, this man who had stood by me through 12 years of marriage, who had never once complained about my silence or my secrets. His brown eyes held mine, steady and sure. None of them had any idea what I had been hiding for the last 12 years. And 30 minutes later, my father stopped smiling. To understand why that moment at the retirement dinner hit me so hard, you need to understand my family. I was born Sarah Mitchell, first child of Robert and Eleanor Mitchell, into what appeared to be the perfect American middle-class family. My father was climbing the corporate ladder at a manufacturing firm. My mother was the supportive wife who managed the household and volunteered at the local church. We lived in a respectable suburban neighborhood in Connecticut, two-story colonial with a white picket fence and a golden retriever named Buddy. By all appearances, I was a lucky kid. But appearances, I learned early, can be deceiving. I was 3 when my brother Michael was born, and from that moment on, I ceased to exist in any meaningful way to my parents. Oh, they fed me and clothed me and made sure I went to school. They weren't neglectful in the legal sense. But emotionally, they had already given all their capacity for love and pride to the new baby. Michael was perfect. Michael could do no wrong. Michael was their son. And I was just there. My earliest memory is of being 4 years old, holding up a drawing I'd made in preschool, a rainbow with a sun and a house, and my mother barely glancing at it before turning back to coo over Michael's scribbles. Look at this, Robert. Isn't Michael's picture wonderful? He's so advanced for his age. Michael was 14 months old. His picture was a series of random crayon marks. But that was how it went. Everything Michael did was extraordinary. Everything I did was expected. Undistinguished. Acceptable, but never exceptional. As we grew older, the pattern only intensified. When I brought home a report card with A's and B's, my father would ask why I didn't have all A's. When Michael brought home a report card with B's and C's, my parents would celebrate his improvement and take him out for ice cream. Michael works so hard, my mother would say. He just doesn't have the same advantages Sarah does. He struggles more. The subtext was clear. I had advantages, and therefore my achievements didn't count. Michael struggled, so his mediocrity was somehow more impressive. This pattern continued through every stage of our lives. In high school, I was in the top 10% of my class, participated in the debate team, and worked at the local library. Michael struggled to maintain AC average, got detention for skipping class, and was caught smoking behind the gym. My parents paid for a private tutor for him and told me I should be more supportive of my brother. When it came time for college, the divide became a canyon. I applied to several good schools and was accepted at the University of Connecticut and Boston University. I worked 2 jobs during my senior year to save money for tuition. My parents told me they couldn't afford to help with my education, that times were tight, that my father's company had been cutting back, that they needed to be careful with their finances. I understood. I didn't complain. I chose UConn because it was more affordable and started my freshman year with a combination of scholarships, student loans, and my own savings. 2 years later, Michael applied to college, or rather, my parents applied for him. When he was accepted to a private liberal arts college that cost $45,000 a year, they paid for every dime. They also bought him a new car. And they gave him a monthly allowance for living expenses. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? I graduated college with honors, I told David once, early in our relationship. I remember calling my parents to tell them. They said, "That's nice, Sarah. We are proud of you." And then my mother started telling me about how Michael was considering law school, and how exciting that was. Michael never went to law school. He barely graduated from the private college. But my parents never stopped talking about his potential, his promise, his bright future. I learned that I would never be enough for them, I told David. Not because I wasn't good enough. But because I wasn't Michael. I wasn't their son. David held my hand and said, "I'm sorry. You deserved better." That was one of the many reasons I married him. David saw me, truly saw me, and never once made me feel like I was second best. But I'm getting ahead of myself. After college, I moved to the city for a job in marketing. I rented a small apartment and started building my life. Michael moved back home and worked part-time at a retail store while my parents paid his bills and told him he was finding himself. I met David when I was 27. He was working as a mechanic at a local auto shop, and I'd brought my car in for an oil change and a strange noise it had been making. David fixed the car, explained the issue in terms I could understand, and didn't try to upsell me on unnecessary repairs. He was kind, honest, and had a laugh that seemed to fill the entire garage. We started dating. 6 months later, he proposed with a simple ring he'd saved for months to afford. My parents were not pleased. "He's a mechanic," my mother said when I brought David to meet them. Her voice was pitched in that overly bright tone she used when she was trying to hide her disappointment. "How interesting." My father shook David's hand, but I could see the calculation behind his eyes. "What are your career prospects?" he asked. "Do you have a plan for advancement?" "I own the shop," David said calmly. "Well, I'm buying it from the previous owner. It's a small business, but it's growing. I have 6 employees now." I was so proud of him. He'd built something from nothing, using his skill and his hard work to create a life for himself. My father didn't say anything, but I could read his expression clearly. Not good enough. Not for my daughter. From that point on, David was always referred to as your friend or the mechanic. Never your boyfriend or your husband. Just the mechanic. Like that was his only identity, his only worth. When we got married, I didn't ask for a wedding. I couldn't bear the idea of my parents making speeches about how proud they were of the happy couple, knowing they couldn't care less about half of that equation. We had a small courthouse ceremony with a few friends and went out for pizza afterward. My parents didn't attend. They said they had a conflict. I found out later from my aunt that they'd attended a golf tournament that weekend. I stopped expecting anything from them after that. But I never stopped loving them. That's the terrible thing about family. Even when they hurt you, even when they show you over and over that you don't matter, you still want their approval. You still hope that maybe, someday, they'll finally see you. Finally love you the way you deserve. That hope, that desperate need for validation from people who had already made up their minds about me, kept me silent for 12 years. It's what made me do the things I did without ever telling anyone. It's what brought me to that retirement dinner, expecting nothing, and still somehow being hurt more than I ever thought possible. 12 years ago, I made a choice that would change everything. I was 27, recently married to David, and working at a marketing firm in New York City. I'd been there for 5 years, climbing the ranks slowly but steadily. I wasn't making a fortune, but I was comfortable. David and I had a small apartment in Queens that we could afford on our combined incomes. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was good. Then I got a phone call from my mother that changed everything. "Sarah," she said, her voice shaky and strange, "your father's company is in trouble." "Trouble?" I asked, immediately on guard. "What kind of trouble?" "Financial trouble," she said. He's been borrowing against the house. And he lost some big clients. He took out a loan with terrible terms to keep things afloat, and now." She started crying. I had never heard my mother cry before. She was always so composed, so proper. "Mom, what's happening? What did Dad do?" "We are losing everything, Sarah. The house. Everything. We don't know what to do." I went to visit them that weekend. The house that had always seemed so grand and secure now felt tired and worn. My father looked older, his face drawn and grey. My mother had dark circles under her eyes. They sat me down in the living room, where I'd spent my childhood Christmases, and told me the full story. My father had been in a position of authority at his firm for years. He made good money, well into six figures. But he'd also developed expensive tastes. The country club membership. The expensive cars. The lavish vacations. He'd been living beyond his means for a long time. 2 years earlier, his company had been struggling. Rather than cut back his lifestyle, my father had borrowed money against the house, invested in some schemes that went south, and signed personal guarantees on business loans that his company couldn't pay back. "It's all collapsing," he admitted, tears streaming down his face. "I can't fix this. I've tried everything. We are going to lose the house, lose everything. I've failed your mother." I remember sitting there, watching the man, who had always seemed so strong and successful, completely fall apart. I should have felt anger, I think. After all, he had never supported me the way I needed. He had never believed in me. He had made me feel worthless and small for my entire life. Instead, all I felt was pity. "What do you need?" I asked. My father looked at me with confusion. "What?" "The mortgage. What does it cost per month?" He blinked. "Sarah, you're a marketing associate. What are you going to do?" "I have savings," I said. "I have access to some money." "Tell me how much you need." This was the first part of the secret I kept from everyone, how I could possibly afford to help them. What my family never knew, what my parents never asked, was that I'd been quietly building something for years. When I was 23, fresh out of college, I'd started investing. Nothing dramatic. I wasn't some financial genius. But I'd done something that turned out to be incredibly smart. I bought a small apartment building with my savings and a mortgage. It was in a neglected part of the city that was being revitalized, and I bought it for pennies compared to what it was worth now. I fixed it up myself with David's help. We rented out the units. The income paid the mortgage and put money in my pocket. That first building had done well. By the time I was 27, I'd purchased a second building. The rental income from those properties was significant. And I'd also invested in some tech companies that were about to go public. I had money. I had a lot more money than anyone knew. But I never told anyone because I knew what would happen. My parents would ask for help and never stop. My brother would want a cut. And David? Well, David I trusted with my life. I didn't tell David about the extent of my wealth for a different reason. I wanted him to love me for who I was, not for what I had. And he did. He loved me when I was a marketing associate living in a tiny apartment. He loved me when I was struggling to get by. He proved that love over and over again. So when my father needed help, I could have told him the truth. I could have said, "I have savings. I have investments. I can make a significant difference." But I didn't want that dynamic. I didn't want him to see me as a cash cow. I didn't want the relationship to become transactional. Instead, I set up a system. I contacted a lawyer, someone from a reputable firm in a different city, and arranged for anonymous transfers to be made to my parents' accounts. "Hire an estate attorney," I told my parents. "I'll find a way to get you some money. It won't be much, but it'll help." I didn't tell them it would be $200,000 in the first year alone. I didn't tell them that I was paying off their mortgage, one payment at a time. I didn't tell them that I was covering medical bills when my mother had a cancer scare. I didn't tell them about my brother's debt. Michael, my perfect brother, had been struggling for years. His private college education hadn't translated into a career. He'd bounced from job to job, taken out loans he couldn't repay, and nearly ruined his credit. My parents had tried to help him, but his debts had grown beyond what they could manage. So I paid them too. Through the lawyer, through anonymous transfers, I quietly paid off Michael's credit card debts. I covered his rent for 6 months when he was between jobs. I made sure he didn't have to declare bankruptcy. All of it anonymous. All of it without any credit. Without any recognition. Because that's what you do for family, right? You help them. You save them. Even if they never know it was you. The irony, the terrible, painful irony, was that my parents assumed Michael had rescued them. Michael, who had no money and no financial resources, had somehow become their hero. Your brother has been such a help, my mother told me. He's been sending money somehow. We don't know where he got it, but he's helped so much. Michael, of course, said nothing. He let them believe. He let them think he was the savior. And I let it happen because it was easier. Because I was afraid of conflict. Because I was tired of being the second best child who could never do anything right. So for 12 years, I maintained the secret. I watched my family struggle and eventually recover, all because of my anonymous donations. I watched my father regain his confidence. I watched my parents buy a small condo when they couldn't afford their house. I watched Michael marry a woman who thought he was successful and put together, completely unaware that his debts had been paid by his sister. And through it all, I never said a word. At my father's retirement party, with 200 guests watching, he called me a failure. He said I was still renting, still driving that old Honda, still needing help. It had never occurred to him that the help he thought he was receiving from Michael might actually be coming from me. It had never occurred to him that the old Honda was a car I'd bought specifically because I didn't want to draw attention to my wealth. It had never occurred to him that I might have accomplished something, anything, with my life. That was the moment I realized I had been living a lie for 12 years. Not the lie about the money. The lie about who I was. The lie that I was unimportant. The lie that I was a failure. I was tired of being invisible. And when David whispered, "Maybe it's finally time they know," I made a decision. It was time for the truth. Let me go back to that moment in the ballroom, standing in my clearance rack dress, fighting back tears while my father insulted me in front of 200 people. After his speech, after the laughter and the murmuring and the looks of pity, I felt like I was suffocating. The room was too hot. The lights were too bright. The noise was overwhelming. "Excuse me," I murmured, pulling away from David. "I need some air." I made my way through the crowd toward the exit, head down, trying not to make eye contact with anyone. I could hear whispers behind me. "Poor Sarah. She's always been such a disappointment. At least Michael turned out well." Michael. I pushed through the door into the hotel lobby, gasping for breath. The lobby was empty, thank God. I leaned against a pillar and tried to compose myself. David appeared a moment later, his face tight with anger. "Sarah, you don't have to stay. We can leave right now." "No," I said, surprising myself. "No, I'm not going to run away. Not this time." "Then what do you want to do?" I looked at him, this man who had never once made me feel small or unimportant. He stood there in his worn suit, his hands calloused from years of working on cars, and he was the most wonderful person I'd ever known. "I want to tell them the truth," I said. "All of it. Everything." David took my hand. "Are you sure? After what he just said? After 12 years of silence?" I shook my head. "I'm done. I'm so done." "Then let's do it. Together." We walked back into the ballroom together, hand in hand. The speeches were continuing. Some colleague of my father's was talking about his career, but I didn't care. I walked up to the head table and interrupted. "Dad, I need to say something." Everyone went quiet. The room was completely silent. "Sarah," my father said, irritated. Can this wait? We are in the middle of something. No, I said. No, it can't wait. You just stood up there and called me a failure in front of everyone. You said I never figured anything out. You said I need help from my family. My mother's eyes widened. Sarah, this isn't the time. Then when is the time, Mom? When is it ever the time? My voice was shaking, but I kept going. You've spent my entire life telling me I'm not good enough. That I'm not successful. That I'm not anything. And I've let you. I've let you because I thought that's what family does. You love them even when they hurt you. Michael stood up. Sarah, you're embarrassing us. Embarrassing you. I laughed, and it was a hollow sound. Michael, you don't know anything about embarrassment. You don't know anything about anything. What are you talking about? David squeezed my hand. Sweetheart, maybe it's time they know. I nodded and looked at my father. Would you like to know who's been supporting this family for the last 12 years? I asked. Would you like to know where all that anonymous money came from? My father's face went pale. What money? The mortgage payments, I said. The medical bills. Michael's debts. All of it. You don't have that kind of money, my mother said. That's impossible. Is it? Just then, the ballroom doors opened and a man in a suit walked in. He was carrying a leather portfolio and looking professional and official. Sarah Mitchell, he asked, spotting me. Thank you for coming, I said. Could you give everyone the folder, please? The lawyer, I'd arranged this months ago, never thinking I'd actually need to use it, walked to my father and handed him a thick folder. You might want to sit down, I said. What is this? My father demanded, opening the folder. Just the last 12 years, I said. Everything. The mortgage payments. The medical bills. Michael's debts. All of it. My father stared at the papers, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror. No, he whispered. This can't be. My mother took the folder, her hands shaking. Her face went white as she read. I don't understand, she said. Sarah, how could you have this kind of money? You're a marketing associate. I'm not a marketing associate, I said. I quit that job 8 years ago. But you told us. I know what I told you. I told you what I needed to tell you to protect myself from this exact moment. Michael was looking at the folder now, his face drained of color. This is impossible. You couldn't have paid off my debts. I didn't have. Didn't have what, Michael? Didn't have debts. I laughed again. You had $80,000 in credit card debt. You nearly declared bankruptcy. I paid every cent of it. Anonymous transfers. You never even knew. I thought. You thought what? That God had miraculously made your debts disappear. That some anonymous benefactor had decided to bail you out. I shook my head. No, Michael. It was me. Your failure, sister. The room was absolutely silent. 200 guests, all of them frozen, watching this family drama unfold. You could have heard a pin drop from a mile away. The lawyer waited patiently by the door. I'd paid him well to be here, but I hadn't expected to need him. I'd arranged it as a contingency, a fail-safe, never thinking I'd have the courage to actually go through with this. But here I was, finally speaking my truth. How? My father asked finally. How did you? He flipped through the papers, the mortgage records, the medical bills, the bank transfers. Each one was clearly documented. Each one had my signature. Each one represented years of secret sacrifice. Total amount, I said calmly, is approximately $1.8 million. Over 12 years. That's what I've put into this family since you nearly lost everything. My mother swayed, and Michael reached out to steady her. Mom? Mom, are you okay? I don't understand, my mother said, her voice small. Sarah, how could you possibly have $1.8 million? Did you think I was just wasting my life? I asked. Did you think I was just working a dead-end job and living in my tiny apartment? Well, yes, she said. That's what you told us. Because I couldn't trust you, I said. Because I knew if you knew how much I had, you'd never stop asking. You'd see me as a resource, not a daughter. You've always seen me as a resource, actually. Just not a valuable one. No one thinks that, Sarah, Michael said, but his voice was shaky and uncertain. You think? I turned to him. Michael, you told Mom and Dad that you helped with their mortgage. You told them you were the one sending money. You let them believe you were their savior. I didn't. Don't lie to me. Not now. Not after everything. My father was still staring at the folder, his face a mask of shock. The mortgage, he repeated, it was you. Every month for 12 years. The mortgage payments, the property taxes, the maintenance. You live in a condo that I've been subsidizing for a decade. Did you really think Michael could afford that on his salary? But you drive an old Honda, my mother said, almost pleading. You live in a rental. How can you? Rental. David laughed, a sharp bitter sound. She doesn't rent anything. My mother blinked. What? Tell them, sweetheart, David said. Tell them all of it. I took a deep breath and then I said. I don't rent. I own 3 apartment buildings in New York City. I own a software company that I started 6 years ago. I have multiple investments in real estate and technology. My net worth is approximately $42 million. The room went completely silent. Then, chaos. Guests erupted in gasps and whispers. People started pulling out their phones, recording the scene. My father dropped the folder, papers scattering across the floor. No, Michael said, shaking his head. No, that's impossible. You can't just. You never did any research on me, did you? I asked. You never once Googled my name. Never wondered what I actually did for a living. The software company, my mother said slowly, her voice hollow. You started a software company. 6 years ago. It's called Arcturus Solutions. Maybe you've heard of it. My mother's face went white. That's one of the fastest growing tech companies in the Northeast. We saw an article about it in the Wall Street Journal. We didn't know it was you, my father said, his voice broken. The article didn't mention you by name. It just said. The founder wanted to remain anonymous, I said. Because I didn't want to deal with this exact situation. I didn't want people coming to me for money. I didn't want my family to know. But why, my mother asked. Why would you hide this from us? We're your family. Because you never believed in me. The words burst out of me, raw and unfiltered. Because you've spent my entire life telling me I was a failure. Because you called me a disappointment in front of everyone, and everyone laughed. You've never been proud of me. You've never seen me as anything but second best. Sarah, that's not true. It is true. It's always been true. I was crying now, tears streaming down my face. You paid for Michael's college. You bought him 2 cars. You helped him with a down payment. And me? I got nothing. I had to work my way through school. I had to build my own life, with no help, no support, no belief. And I succeeded. I succeeded more than anyone in this family ever could. Sarah, please. My mother reached for me. "Don't," I said, stepping back. "Don't touch me. Not now. Not when you've been humiliating me for years." The room had become a circus of whispers, gasps, and phone cameras. Guests who had been laughing at me 30 minutes ago were now scrambling to capture the drama. I could hear them murmuring, "The daughter. The one who never figured anything out. $42 million. She's been paying their mortgage for years." Michael was the first to break from the shock. "This is insane," he said, his face twisted in anger. "You've been lying to us for years. You've been pretending to be poor just to make us look bad." "I wasn't pretending to be poor," I said. "I was protecting myself from your greed." "There's a difference. Protecting yourself. You're a billionaire." "Not a billionaire. Just very wealthy. Wealthy enough to know what happens when people find out you have money." "You never trusted us," my mother said, her voice barely a whisper. "You never trusted your own family." "Trust?" I laughed, a bitter broken sound. "You're asking me about trust? After what you did at this party? After what you've been doing my entire life? Sarah, we love you." "Really? Because you've been telling everyone that I'm a failure. You called me a failure in front of 200 people, and then had a good laugh about it. Is that what love looks like to you?" My father found his voice. I was just making conversation. You were insulting me. You were humiliating me. In public. In front of everyone who matters to you." I shook my head. "And you didn't even think twice about it." "Sarah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. Didn't mean to. You stood up there and said I never figured anything out. You said I wasn't leadership material. You said I needed help from my family." My voice cracked. "And everyone laughed, Dad. Everyone. I didn't know you were. It doesn't matter if I have money. It doesn't matter if I'm successful. What matters is that I'm your daughter, and you've never once made me feel like I matter to you." My mother was crying now, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. "Sarah, please. We're sorry. We didn't know." "No," I said, calmer now. "You didn't know. And that's the point. You made assumptions about me because you never bothered to ask. You never bothered to care. You saw me as a failure because that's what you wanted to see." "But why?" my father asked, his voice genuinely confused. "Why would you hide this from us? I told you. I didn't want to deal with this. So you just let us think you were poor. I let you think whatever you wanted to think. You never asked about my life. You never visited my apartment. You never came to see me or David. You didn't know anything about us because you never wanted to know." My father hung his head. "You're right," he said. "You're right about everything." "Wait, Dad," Michael interjected. "Don't do this. She's the one who's been lying. She's been protecting herself," David said, stepping forward. "Your parents created a situation where she felt she had to hide her success. That's on them, not on her." Michael turned to David. "Stay out of this. You're just the mechanic." "Michael, that's enough," my father said sharply. "I'm not the one who's been hiding millions of dollars and pretending to be poor." "Michael, I paid off your debts," I said, my voice cold. "I made sure you didn't declare bankruptcy. I saved your credit. And you can't even thank me. You can't even acknowledge that I helped you. I didn't ask for your help." "That's not true. You begged Mom and Dad for money. You were desperate. They were desperate. And I stepped in because I couldn't stand to see them suffer." "Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have done exactly what you're doing now. You'd find a way to resent me for it. You'd find a way to make it my fault. The party was over, obviously. People were leaving in droves, some making excuses, others just slipping out the door. A few relatives lingered, watching the drama unfold. I could see my aunt in the corner, her face pressed to her phone as she recorded everything. "Sarah," my mother said, her voice breaking. "Please. Can we talk? Privately?" "There's nothing to talk about," I said. "I've said what I needed to say. Everyone knows the truth now." "I can't believe you did this in public," Michael muttered. "You've humiliated us." "Humiliated you?" I laughed. "You've been humiliating me for years. Tonight was just the first time I fought back." The aftermath was worse than I could have imagined. Within hours of the party, the video was everywhere. Relatives had filmed the entire confrontation. Some had live-streamed it. By midnight, the footage had gone viral on social media with captions like "Boomer parents get owned by secretly wealthy daughter," and "Man calls daughter failure, finds out she's a millionaire." Local news picked up the story. Then national news. Connecticut woman reveals $42 million secret at father's retirement party. I was mortified at first. I'd never wanted this level of attention. I'd spent years building a life in the shadows, quietly accumulating wealth and success without anyone knowing. Now, everyone knew. But there was also something liberating about it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't hiding. I wasn't pretending. The truth was out there, and I couldn't take it back even if I wanted to. My family, however, was in crisis. My father's retirement was overshadowed by the scandal. His colleagues whispered behind his back. His legacy, built over 42 years, was now defined by this one night. He became a cautionary tale, a punchline in the jokes of business associates who'd once respected him. My mother stopped answering her phone. She retreated into herself, refusing to talk to anyone. My aunt told me she'd barely left the house in the weeks after the party. Michael, predictably, blamed me for everything. "You ruined us," he screamed over the phone. "You and your pathetic need for attention. You couldn't just keep your mouth shut, could you? You had to show everyone what a big success you are." "I didn't show anyone anything," I said. "I just told the truth." "The truth? The truth is that you're a selfish, manipulative liar who's been playing games with all of us for years. Michael, I literally saved you from bankruptcy. I paid off your debts. I protected you and Mom and Dad for 12 years. What have you ever done for me? Don't pretend like you did it for me. You did it for yourself. So you could hold it over our heads." I hung up on him. There was no point arguing. He'd never see things clearly because he'd built his entire identity around being the successful one, the golden child. My success threatened everything he believed about himself. Worse than Michael's anger was my discovery of the truth. A few days after the party, I was going through some old family photos in my parents' house when I found a file in my mother's desk. It contained emails between my parents and Michael dating back 10 years. In these emails, my parents acknowledged that they knew Michael hadn't been the one sending money. They knew the anonymous transfers had been coming from someone else. They'd even suspected it was me. "We knew you were the one helping us," my mother admitted when I confronted her. "But Michael was so proud, and we thought if we let him take credit, it would help him. He was struggling so much. So you let him take credit for something I did. We didn't want to embarrass him. But you were fine embarrassing me. You were fine calling me a failure in front of everyone. We didn't know you'd be upset," my father said. "We thought you understood." "Understood what?" "That you'd rather have a son who lied about helping you than a daughter who actually helped you." "It wasn't like that." "Yes, it was. It was exactly like that. You wanted Michael to be the hero, so you let him lie and you let me be the loser. Even though I was the one paying your mortgage, and your medical bills and every damn thing else. The tears came then. All the years of pain and resentment and loneliness poured out of me. I cried in a way I hadn't cried since I was a child, desperate for my parents' love and approval, knowing I would never get it. You've always loved him more, I sobbed. My whole life, you've loved him more. And I kept trying to earn your love. I kept doing things to make you proud. And it was never, ever enough. We were wrong, my father said. We were so wrong. But it's too late. I'm not a child anymore. I don't need your approval. I don't need your love. I have my own life. I have my own family. But we love you, Sarah, my mother said. We've always loved you. You never showed it. You never once made me feel like I mattered. The discovery that my parents knew about Michael's lies, that they'd actively participated in them, was the deepest betrayal. I could have forgiven the humiliation at the party. I could have forgiven the years of neglect and favoritism. But I couldn't forgive that they'd known the truth and chosen to maintain the fiction. They knew I was the one supporting them, and they let Michael take all the credit. They knew I was the one sacrificing, and they let him be the hero. They knew I had been there for them in their darkest moments, and they let everyone believe it was their golden child who saved them. Why? I asked my mother, my voice breaking. Why would you do that to me? We were trying to help Michael, she said, her eyes full of tears. He was so lost. He needed to feel like he was successful. He needed to feel like he was contributing. But what about what I needed? What about me? You seemed so strong, she said. You didn't seem to need us. Michael needed us. Michael needed you because you created a situation where he was dependent on you. You paid for everything. You bailed him out of every problem. He never had to learn to stand on his own. We know, my father said, his voice thick with tears. We know we made mistakes. We know we failed you. You failed both of us. You failed Michael by making him weak. You failed me by never seeing what I could become. But the truth was worse than favoritism. The truth was that my parents actively chose to support my brother's lies because it fit their preferred narrative. They wanted the perfect son. They wanted a family story that followed the traditional lines, the son who achieves, who takes care of his parents, who carries on the family name. And they were willing to sacrifice me, to erase my contributions and my achievements, to have that story. When I confronted Michael about this, he was furious. You think you're so superior, he raged. You think because you have money, you're better than me. I don't think I'm better than you, Michael. I think I saved you. Over and over again. And you never even said thank you. Thank you for what? For humiliating me in public. For destroying my reputation. Destroying your reputation. You did that yourself, by lying about being the one who helped Mom and Dad. I never lied. I just never corrected them. There's a difference. Is there? To me, it looks the same. You let them believe something that wasn't true because it benefited you. He didn't answer that. Instead, he changed the subject. You think you're so successful, he said. But you're miserable, Sarah. You're alone and miserable. You don't have anyone who really loves you. I have David. A mechanic who's just using you for your money. He was with me before I had money. He was with me when I was just a marketing assistant. We've been together for 12 years, Michael. He's not using me for anything. You think your friends are any different? You think anyone in your life actually cares about you? At least I have friends. At least I have a husband who loves me. What do you have, Michael? A wife who's probably wondering if you're really who you pretended to be. That hit a nerve. I could see it in his face. What are you talking about? Jennifer doesn't know, does she? She thinks you're this successful businessman. She has no idea I paid off your credit card debt. She has no idea you were about to declare bankruptcy when I stepped in. That's none of your business. Of course it's my business. I made it my business when I wrote that check. I never asked you to help me. I never wanted your charity. I know you didn't. You were too proud to ask. But I did it anyway. Because I thought that's what family did. I thought that's what I should do. I shook my head. But I was wrong. I should have let you sink or swim. I should have let you learn the hard way. I'm going to tell Jennifer the truth, he said, suddenly defiant. I'm going to tell her everything. And then I'm going to tell everyone else in the family what a fake you are. What am I faking, Michael? I haven't lied about anything. I just didn't tell people about my money. That's not the same thing as faking my life. 6 months after the party, my life was almost completely different. I cut contact with Michael entirely. I blocked his number, unfriended him on social media, and made it clear to the rest of the family that I didn't want to hear about him. If he wanted to reach out and apologize, he knew where to find me. But I wasn't holding my breath. My parents struggled with the changes. They'd lost their golden child to the truth. Michael's marriage had fallen apart when Jennifer found out about his financial history. She'd left him, taking their 2 children, and he'd had to move back in with my parents. Meanwhile, the house of cards that had been their relationship with their community was collapsing. Relatives who had once admired my father now whispered about him behind his back. Friends distanced themselves from the whole family. The reputation he'd spent his entire life building was destroyed. My mother wrote me letters. Long, rambling letters full of apologies and desperation. She wanted to see me. She wanted to make things right. But every letter was followed by a note from my father, asking me to think about how hard this was for them. Finally, I agreed to meet them at a small restaurant outside the city. Neutral ground. I walked into the restaurant with David, my hand in his. I was terrified, but I knew I had to do this. If I was ever going to move on, I needed to face them. You look well, my father said, standing when I approached. His voice was quiet, humble. He looked older. His face was drawn, with deep lines around his eyes. His shoulders were hunched, the way they'd always been when he was worried about his reputation. Thank you, I said, sitting down across from them. Thank you for coming, my mother said. We know this isn't easy for you. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I know we have no right to ask anything of you, my father said, his voice cracking. We know what we did. We are both so ashamed. Dad, I spent 40 years loving the wrong child, he said, tears spilling down his cheeks. I'm not saying that to make you feel better. I'm saying it because it's the truth. Robert, don't, my mother said. It needs to be said. Sarah, you were always the one who was there for us. You were the one who helped. And we never appreciated you. We never even saw you. All we saw was Michael, and he wasn't even, all he did was pretend to be something he wasn't. I sat there, stunned. After 40 years, I had never heard my father speak this way. Michael is not capable of what you've done, he continued. He's not capable of the sacrifice, the love, the commitment. He's weak. He's selfish. And we made him that way. We spoiled him, we protected him, and we made him into someone who couldn't function without us. Dad, Please, he said, holding up his hand. I'm sorry. We are both sorry. We don't deserve your forgiveness. We don't expect it. But we want you to know that we see you now. We see everything you've done for us. My mother was crying too now, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm sorry I ever made you feel like you weren't enough. Because you are enough. You've always been enough. You're more than enough. You're everything. And then she reached across the table and took my hand. I know we don't deserve a second chance, she said. But I'm going to ask anyway. I'm going to ask for your forgiveness. Not because we deserve it, but because I can't live without you. I sat there for a long moment, looking at them both. These were the people who had made me feel so small for so long. These were the people who had humiliated me, betrayed me, and taught me that love was conditional and fleeting. But they were also my parents. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to push them away. I wanted to tell them it was too late, that they'd had their chance and they'd failed. But as I sat there, I realized something important. I wasn't angry at them anymore. I was tired. Tired of carrying all that resentment, all that pain. Tired of letting their opinion of me determine my own self-worth. I'd spent my entire life trying to be good enough for them. Trying to earn their love. And I didn't need to anymore. I forgive you, I said quietly. Not because you deserve it, but because I need to move on. I can't keep carrying this weight. My mother burst into tears. My father reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You are a better person than we ever were, he said. We don't deserve you. But we are going to spend the rest of our lives trying to be worthy of you. I'm not asking you to be worthy of me, I said. I'm asking you to see me. To love me for who I am. Not for what I can do for you. Not for what I have. But just for me. We do see you, my mother said. We are so sorry we didn't see you before. We are so sorry for everything. I accepted their apology. But I also drew boundaries. I don't want to go back to how things were, I said. I'm not going to pretend that the past didn't happen. I'm not going to pretend that I didn't get hurt. But I'm willing to try to rebuild something new with you. Thank you, my father said. Thank you, Sarah. That's more than we deserve. A few months later, Michael reached out. He was living with my parents still, his marriage over, his career in ruins. He'd been forced to face the truth about his own life, that everything he had, everything he'd been given, was a product of my sacrifice, my support, my hard work. I need to talk to you, he said on the phone. No. Sarah, please. I'm not asking for anything. I just want to see you. Michael, you called me a liar. You blamed me for your problems. You made me feel like I was the villain for telling the truth. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Sorry doesn't fix what happened. No, but it's a start. Please, Sarah. Just one conversation. I agreed to meet him. But I wouldn't do it alone. David came with me. We met at a coffee shop near my apartment. Michael looked terrible. His face was pale, his clothes disheveled. He looked like a man who'd been through a war and lost. Thank you for coming, he said. I'm here, I said. What do you want? I want to apologize. I want to tell you I was wrong. That's new, I said. I know I've been terrible to you. I know I've treated you badly. I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to blame anyone else. I was the one who did it. Why did you do it, Michael? Because I was afraid, he said. I was so afraid of being the loser, of being the failure. I never had anything of my own. I never built anything. Everything I had, I was given. And the one thing I wanted more than anything was to be something. So you pretended to be something. Yes. I pretended to be the successful son. The one who took care of mom and dad. The one who got things done. But it was all a lie. I know. And I hate myself for it. Not enough to actually do something about it. What do you mean? I looked at him for a long moment. I saw the little boy who had always been the favorite, the golden child. And I saw the man who had destroyed his own life, because he couldn't stand to be anything less. I gave you everything, Michael. I gave you freedom from debt. I gave you a chance to build a better life. And what did you do with it? You spent it pretending to be something you weren't. I didn't. Yes, you did. You pretended to be successful. You pretended to be someone you weren't. And you never once thanked me. You're right, he said, and his voice broke. You're right about everything. I know I'm right. But I don't say it to hurt you. I say it because I want you to understand. Understand what? That you're not a failure. You're just a person who made mistakes. The same as everyone else. But I made so many mistakes. I ruined my marriage. I ruined my relationship with you. I ruined my relationship with mom and dad. Mom and dad still love you. They always will. They've been broken by this, but they still love you. Why? Why do they love me? I didn't deserve it. I never deserved it. I reached across the table and took his hand. Because you're their son. Just like I'm their daughter. They loved us both, even when they didn't show it the right way. I loved you, he said. I always loved you. I was just jealous of you. Jealous of me. You were so strong. You built your own life from nothing. You didn't need anyone else. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't take care of myself. I had to have someone else take care of me. Everyone needs help sometimes, Michael. There's no shame in that. There is when you pretend to be something you're not. He was crying then, tears streaming down his face. The waitress looked over at us, unsure what to do. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry for everything I did to you. I'm sorry for lying. I'm sorry for letting everyone believe I was the hero when you were the one who saved us. Michael. I'm sorry for being a terrible brother. I'm sorry for never being there for you. I'm sorry for all of it. I didn't say anything. I just sat there, holding his hand. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. You're my brother, I said. Of course I forgive you. But it's going to take time. Time for what? Time for me to trust you again. Time for us to rebuild our relationship. I want to believe you've changed, but I need to see it. I understand, he said. I'll earn your trust. I'll spend the rest of my life earning your trust. That's all I ask. I still didn't trust him completely. I didn't know if I ever would. But I knew that forgiving him was the right thing to do, not for him, but for me. I needed to let go of the bitterness and the anger. I needed to move forward. 1 year after the retirement party, my life looked completely different. The publicity had died down. People had moved on to the next viral story, the next scandal, the next drama. My name was no longer in the headlines. But the changes in my life were real and lasting. David and I had started a scholarship fund in my family's name. It was a way to honor the sacrifices we'd all made, the lessons we'd all learned. We gave scholarships to women in business, people who had been overlooked or underestimated, just like I had. We also adopted 2 children. 2 beautiful little girls from foster care, aged 4 and 6. They'd been through so much, neglect, trauma, loss. But they were the most resilient, amazing little humans I'd ever met. Watching them grow, watching them heal, was the most fulfilling experience of my life. "Are you happy, Sarah?" David asked me one night, as we sat on the porch of our new house. We'd bought a house in upstate New York, far away from the city where I'd built my fortune. It had a big backyard where the girls could run and play. It had a porch where we could sit and watch the stars. It had a garden where we grew vegetables and flowers. It was simple, humble, and perfect. "I'm happy," I said. "I'm happier than I've ever been." "Good," he said, taking my hand. "Because I'm happy too." "David, do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't told the truth? If I'd just kept it secret forever?" "I don't wonder about that," he said. "I wonder about what you've become now that you've told the truth. You've freed yourself, Sarah. You've finally allowed yourself to be seen." I spent my whole life trying to prove my worth to people who had already decided I had none. The funny thing is, the moment I stopped needing their approval was the moment I finally became free. And now I know who I am. I know what I'm worth. And I don't need anyone else to tell me. David kissed my forehead. "I'm so proud of you. I've always been proud of you. And I always will be." The door to the house opened and our oldest girl ran out, her little sister close behind. "Mama. Dada. Come look. We built a fort." "What kind of fort?" I asked, smiling. "A big one. With blankets and pillows and everything." We followed the girls inside. The living room was covered in blankets, chairs, and pillows. In the center was an elaborate structure that looked like it might collapse at any moment. "Wow," David said. "You built that yourselves?" "Yes. It took forever." "It's beautiful," I said. "Can I come inside?" The girls grinned. "Yes, Mama. But you have to crawl." I got down on my hands and knees and crawled into the fort. It was small and cramped, full of pillows and stuffed animals. The girls had brought snacks and flashlights. It was the best fort I'd ever been in. "This is amazing," I said. "I love it. This is our family," the older girl said. "All of us together. We are never going to leave each other, right?" "Never," I said, pulling them both into a hug. "We are never going to leave each other. We are a family. And families stay together." The year had been hard. There had been tears and arguments and moments of doubt. There had been times when I wondered if I'd made a mistake by letting my family back into my life. But looking at the girls, at my husband, at the life we'd built together, I knew it had all been worth it. I'd let go of the past. I'd forgiven the people who hurt me. And I'd built a new future for myself. Not because I needed to prove anything. Not because I wanted to show my parents I was successful. But because I deserved to be happy. The final conversation with my family came on Christmas Eve. We were all together at my parents' house, the condo I'd been paying for all these years. My father had finally accepted that I had helped them, and he'd stopped pretending otherwise. Michael was there too, with his new girlfriend, a woman who seemed genuinely kind and not at all interested in his money or his success. "Sarah," my father said, as we were all sitting around the tree, "I want to say something." "Of course, Dad. Everyone in this room knows how much you've done for this family. Everyone knows about the mortgage, the medical bills, everything. And I want to publicly apologize for never acknowledging it before." "Dad, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to. I want you to know that I see you. I see everything you've done. And I'm so incredibly proud of you." I felt tears sting my eyes. "Thank you, Dad. I'm also proud of the person you've become. Not because of your money. Not because of your success. But because you're kind. You're generous. You're strong. You're everything I could have hoped for in a daughter. And I'm proud of you, Dad, I said, standing up to hug him. I'm proud of you for admitting your mistakes. I'm proud of you for trying to make things right. Did your parents really call you a failure in front of all those people? My little girl asked, her face full of innocence. I laughed. They did. But it wasn't true. I know, she said. Because you're my mom. And you're the best person I know. That's right, I said. That's exactly right. And as the family sat around the tree, laughing and talking and sharing presents, I felt a peace I'd never felt before. I had found my way home. And that's when my father looked at me, not with disappointment, but with tears, and quietly said something I'd waited 40 years to hear. I'm proud of you, Sarah. I smiled through my tears and said, thank you, Dad. That means everything to me. I spent so many years not seeing you, he continued. Not appreciating you. And I'll never forgive myself for that. But I want you to know that I see you now. I see the wonderful person you've become. I was only ever trying to make you proud, I said. That's all I ever wanted. I know, he said. And I failed you. I failed to show you that you were already enough. You were always enough. I love you, Dad. I love you too, Sarah. More than you'll ever know. My mother was crying too, and Michael was uncharacteristically quiet. I guess this is what family is supposed to be like, Michael said, finally breaking the silence. Messy and complicated and full of love. That's exactly right, I said. That's exactly what family is. And I finally let myself believe that maybe, after everything, things could be different. Maybe we could be a real family. Maybe there was hope for us all. It wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect. There were still arguments and misunderstandings and moments of tension. But we were trying. We were all trying. And that was enough. I'm sitting on the porch of my house, watching my daughters chase fireflies across the lawn. David is beside me, reading a book. The summer air is warm and heavy, full of the sounds of cicadas and distant laughter. Life has changed so much in the past year. I've let go of so many things, the resentment, the anger, the desperate need for approval. I've built a life that is truly my own. My software company is thriving. My investments are secure. My family is safe and happy. But the greatest change is internal. I used to define my worth by what my parents thought of me. I used to measure my success by how well I met their expectations. But now I know better. My worth comes from within. My success is my own. My life is mine to live. When I tell people about what happened at my father's retirement party, they usually ask one question. Are you glad you did it? Are you glad you told the truth? And I always answer the same way. Yes. Because the truth set me free. It set all of us free. I had kept so many secrets for so long. I had hidden who I really was, what I'd really accomplished, how much I'd really sacrificed. And in doing so, I'd let my family define me. I'd let them make me feel small and unimportant and invisible. But I wasn't small. I wasn't unimportant. I wasn't invisible. I was just waiting for the right moment to be seen. That moment came at my father's retirement party. And when it did, I finally stepped into the light. Now, I'm living my truth. I'm loving my family. I'm building a legacy. And the best part is my parents are proud of me. Not because I have money. Not because I'm successful. But because I'm their daughter. And they finally see me. I'm proud of you, Sarah, my father told me that Christmas Eve. And for the first time in my life, I believed him. The fireflies are dancing around the yard, tiny sparks of light in the gathering darkness. My daughters run through the grass, laughing with the pure joy of childhood. David wraps his arm around my shoulder. You okay? I'm perfect, I say. Absolutely perfect. Good, he says. That's all I ever wanted. We sit there in comfortable silence, watching the children play, watching the stars come out. And I think about everything that's happened in the past year. The anger and pain and sadness. The forgiveness and healing and hope. It wasn't easy, I say, almost to myself. What wasn't easy? All of it. The secrets. The lies. The moment at the party. Everything I had to do to get to this point. Nothing worthwhile is easy, David says. No, I agree. But it was worth it. All of it. The girls run up to the porch, their faces flushed with excitement. Mom? Did you see? We caught fireflies. Show me, I say, bending down to look at the mason jar they are holding. Inside are tiny lights, blinking and swirling. It's beautiful. It's simple. It's everything. You know, I say, looking at David, fireflies only glow when they are happy. They are some of the happiest creatures in nature. The girls grin. We are happy, they say. We are so happy. Me too, I say. Me too. And I realize that I've finally found what I've been looking for my entire life. Not success. Not wealth. Not even my parents' approval. Just peace. Just happiness. Just love. And I have it all. So that's my story. The secret I kept for 12 years. The moment I finally told the truth. The consequences that followed. And the healing that came after. I spent my whole life trying to prove my worth to people who had already decided I had none. The funny thing is, the moment I stopped needing their approval was the moment I finally became free. And that's when my father looked at me, not with disappointment, but with tears, and quietly said something I'd waited 40 years to hear. I am proud of you, Sarah. I am proud of me too. Proud of who I've become. Proud of what I've accomplished. Proud of the life I've built. And most importantly, proud that I finally have the courage to be seen. To be known. To be loved. For exactly who I am.